I don't know what's going on, but maybe the weather, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. We're here. You ready up there? Here we go. I want to let everybody know that not next Wednesday, but the Wednesday next Wednesday, which is Wednesday the April 6th, is the actual night of Passover. So we will not be meeting that night. Okay, so we won't be here, and they won't be up in Freedom Night either. We're going to, and if you would like to have an order of maybe how to do something in your own house, or maybe have some people over or whatever, we're going to have those available. They'll be available online, and they'll be available that you can just pick one up and read it if you want to do your own, like, at home Seder. And then we have our big one that we will be doing on the 8th, which is Saturday, which is literally going to be during unleavened bread. But I'll go over all that in a couple weeks, because we're almost there. But just wanted everybody to know that. Is that what you wanted to know, Dave?
So it starts Tuesday night?
No, Wednesday night.
I thought it was...
I don't know why. I've said Wednesday night for years. For a year.
I thought it was on Wednesday, so Tuesday night, Wednesday night.
Wednesday night.
Thursday night is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I'm reading the calendar. So don't go by my words. You look it up, find out when it is, because I might be wrong. And maybe I was when we went over that, and you had the idea of the 3 in a row, which... it will work. I mean, if you have it on the right date, that would work, because it alternates like that. So you would have it like that every now and then.
It was based upon the presumption that Pentecost would be the same day of the year.
Right. Right.
There's only one way for that to happen. If everything else is the same day, then everything,
Yeah. We'll do that another night, because right now,
Yeah, gotcha.
you and I are the only ones that know what in the world you're talking about. Correct. All right. Now, to make it even worse on you and I, or whoever, knowing what in the world we're talking about, we have a reading tonight. At least we'll look at it, okay? This is Genesis 1, and we like practicing Hebrew, and I did send this out in the email, so it is online. All you have to do is click on the link, and you'll end up right here, which is Genesis 1, and I believe this is, I don't remember the name of the program, but it's on your notes there. So all we're going to do right now is we're going to read Genesis 1:1 in Hebrew. Okay? Those of you that want to try, what I would like you to do is we'll just read the Hebrew letters. You notice there's an aleph right at the beginning there that's more dark than the other letters. Okay? That's to let you know that's verse 1. Okay? So that aleph there at the beginning, right here, ta-da! That aleph is only a marker that's verse 1. Now, they didn't have those markers in Yeshua's day, but they have them now in Torah, okay? All right. So the word has a beit and a resh and an aleph and a sheen and a yod and a tav. See that? Okay? If you're going to sound them out, even without the vowels, you have ba, ra, sh, yet. Okay? And if you add the little vowel marks in, you have ba, re, sh, eat. Okay? Say that all together. Barashit. Barashit. Very good. The next word is a beit and a resh and an aleph. Okay? And you have the little vowels underneath that make the ah sound. So beit, resh, aleph would be bara. Bara. See that? Okay, Barashit bara. Okay, notice the next word is an aleph and a lamed and a hey and a yod and a mem. Okay, and with your little vowel marks under and above those letters, then you're going to have Elohim. Okay, so you have, say it with me together, Barashit bara Elohim. Okay, the next word that isn't really a word is Aleph Tav. If you're reading Hebrew, it's pronounced et. Eight, okay? And we've gone over what it means more than once, and right now all we're doing is reading it, so we won't worry about going over it, but it's 8, okay? Next word, hey, shin, mem, yod, mem. Okay, and the reason the mems look different there is when the letter mem is at the end of a word, it looks different, like that box, the square box. So if I read it, it's going to be ha-shamayim. Okay? Now, if you have the H or the hey at the beginning of the word, ha, it means the. That's your article. So Hebrew has no the. In Hebrew, the, like the heavens, is the word heavens with a hey at the beginning of it. So that means that Yamayim means heavens. Ha-shamayim means the heavens. Okay, 2 more words. Vav, Aleph, Tav. Okay, here's something else. If you have a hey at the beginning of the word, it's the. If you have a vav at the beginning of the word, it's and. Okay, so that has a vav at the beginning of it. So then you have, so you have vav, Aleph, Tav. You've already had that Aleph, Tav, right? Okay, that's another 8. But now it has a V on it, so it's going to be and is what it's going to mean. V8. And then the last would be hey, tells you that's another the. And Aleph, Resh, what's that last letter? Ayin. Ayin. No, that's not an ayin. I'm sorry. That's a tzadeh. Tzadeh. It looks different at the end of the word as well. So that would be va'et haaretz. Va'et haaretz. All together now. Orchestra. Ready. Here we go. Barashit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et haaretz. In the beginning, Elohim created the heaven, or the heavens and the earth. Because heavens is plural. Because it ends with that im noise. So there you go. There's a little Hebrew for the night. Next week, we'll work on the next verse. Cool? Okay. So now, let's get into the reading and get into the notes. All right. We are almost at the very end of the book of Exodus. What's very interesting that it does this in the Bible. And sometimes people think, well, that's really boring, a really boring way to do it, but you're not an ancient Hebrew. So that's the reason why. So you have in the middle of the book of Exodus, what is the Hebrew name of the book of Exodus? Shemot. Okay, and Shemot means names. Okay, so in the book of names, otherwise known as the book of Exodus, in the middle you have a description description of how to make the clothing that all the priests are going to be wearing, how to build the ark, how to build the menorah, how to build the tabernacle, how to do all that. So you have all that description of how to do all that. Okay, then it's like you have a couple of sections in there where some things happened, and then you have a description of this is what they did. And they did it exactly like the directions, and it's almost verbatim. It's almost like you're reading it and you go, I've already read this. And the reason is you already read it. Okay, you read it like 5 chapters ago. You read, here's the directions, and now you're reading, here's what they did. And it's just like the directions. Hello, welcome. And that's kind of what's going on here. All right, now, as they're ready to literally build the building, build the tabernacle and all of that, right at the beginning of it, and we looked at this again, we looked at this a little bit last week, right at the beginning of it, you read that Moses assembled the whole community of the people of Israel and said to them, these are the things which Adonai has ordered you to do. On 6 days, work is to be done, but the 7th day is a holy day for you, a Shabbat of complete rest in honor of Adonai. Whoever does any work on it is to be put to death. Okay, so what does that mean? Have you ever worked on Shabbat? Why are you alive? God's mercy and grace, right? Okay, now you got to remember, this is Israel coming out of the chute and learning what is right and what is wrong. And something else, remember, and we've already gone over this, even though it reads in this version, the complete Jewish Bible reads, whoever does any work on it is to be put to death. When you read that in English, you're like, there's no option, right? If you mess up, you die, okay? These penalties were limits. It wasn't a, you've got to die. It was, this is a crime that is worthy of the death penalty. That's how bad it is, or that's the weight of it. And that's what he wanted them to know, that this is the weight of it. Now, there was a guy that worked on that day, and they put him to death, kind of like an example. Okay? That happened in the New Testament. There was an example. Remember? In the book of Acts, Ananias and Sapphira, they lied basically to God, or tried to lie to God, and lied to the leaders and everything, and they dropped dead. Okay, there's no other example in the New Testament about that happening. And you read it, you're like, whoa, that's exactly what you're supposed to do when you read it. You're supposed to be like, whoa. Okay. Now, does that normally happen? No. Is there anybody that you know of that it's happened to? I don't know anybody that that's happened to. That's not what matters. What matters is not whether this is going to happen to you or not. What matters is you're reading about the weight that he puts on a matter. Okay? So maybe we should think about that. Now, as building this building was going to be a lot of work, and it was really important, because this was going to be God dwelling in the midst of you. So in order for God to dwell in the midst of you, he wanted this built, and he wanted it to look like that. And imagine they were anxious to have God living in the midst of them, because they were really happy to bring everything that was needed. But it's very interesting that he reminds them, by the way, even as you're doing this work, building this tabernacle, don't forget Shabbat. Okay, so we're going to look at that a little bit and look about what Shabbat is and why it matters and all of that, okay? So you remember back in Genesis when we find the word Shabbat, where is it? Genesis, right in the creation, like right at the end of it, okay, which is Genesis 2 something. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished along with everything in them, and on the seventh day God was finished with his work which he'd done, so he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. God blessed the seventh day, separated it as holy, because on that day God rested from all his work which he had created, so that it itself could produce. Okay, so the word holy is right there. Never used anywhere else in Genesis 1 in the creation till you get to Shabbat, and it's holy. Okay? There's a note there of something that I read off of Judaism 101. Okay, so this is not Christianity 101, this is Judaism 101. So they're going to have a little bit different angle that they're looking at it, okay? And this is what it says here. People who do not observe Shabbat think of it as a day filled with stifling restrictions or as a day of prayer. Okay? But to those who observe Shabbat, it is a precious gift from God, a day of great joy, eagerly awaited throughout the week, a time when we can set aside all of our weekday concerns and devote ourselves to higher pursuits. In Jewish literature, poetry, and music, Shabbat is described as a bride or queen, as in the popular Shabbat hymn, Lech Dodi Likrat Kala. Come, my beloved, to meet the Shabbat bride. Said more than Israel has kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept Israel. So, pretty neat, huh? Okay, and I believe it will do that for us. The more that you're able to do it, all right, the more you're able to draw near, I believe, which is what all of this is all about, is drawing near to God. Okay? Now, as we learned last week, that Shabbat is a sign that, number one, we are God's, and number two, He created the universe. Okay? Boop, boop. We're giving witness to that. Okay? And it's in the words, the 10 words, right? Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Okay? But many people believe that Shabbat is only for the Jews, just like they believe the other holy days are only Jewish, though those are Jewish, right? And the only reason they believe that is tradition. It's the only reason. It has nothing to do with the Bible. That's obvious. Just read the Bible. Okay? It's tradition. And, you know, sometimes even when you point that out, so that maybe people realize, you know, what you're doing or not doing is not based on the Bible. It's based in tradition. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
So, in the New Testament, the Gentiles were observing the same.
Of course.
When did they? Okay, that would have been sometime between 100 and 300 AD, sometime in that couple hundred years period. But there's evidence that, you know, the group that molded together, that we would use the word Messianics, they were made up of Jews and Gentiles, okay? And they all kept the days. They you know, I don't know that you would know that there was a difference in them. whether they were Jews or Gentiles. You wouldn't know that. Okay, but what happened is two things happened, at least, all right? One is there began to be more of the Gentiles than there were of the Jewish believers, okay? So they grew into a number that they started taking over. So that's one element, okay? And that grew into the government wanting to be involved because the emperor looked out and said, hey, you know what? This is a great new religion, and there's a lot of people that are following it, so rather than fight against it, why don't I just make it the religion of the empire? And that was the beginning of the religion of Christianity, okay? Which you and I would know of as Catholicism. When I was in, even 30 whatever years ago, when I was in seminary and we had to learn church history, and I learned it as a Baptist in a Baptist seminary, I'm reading it and I'm going, this is Catholic history. And my professors were like, yeah, that's Christianity. And today, in the rest of the world, if you mention that word Christian, it's normally assumed that you're Catholic, that's what that means, because that's the history of it. So that's one end of it. So you had that branch of the Roman government, Gentile Christianity, coming in and taking it over. On the other end of it, you had Jews that didn't want the Gentiles to be anywhere near them, and the fact that they had these Jewish messianics among them, they didn't mind that there were people that believed that Jesus was Messiah. They minded that these people were allowing Gentiles into their synagogues. So eventually they kicked them out. So then you had the people who were in the middle, the Messianics, and they had the Romans on the one hand and the Jews on the other hand, and they were squeezed in the middle, and people opted to be in one or the other groups, because to be in the middle group, the Messianic group, you might get killed. So, and that group existed throughout history, but they existed as what's known as a remnant, which is a very small, almost like underground movement of believers that don't rear their head up so everybody will know who they are, you know. Interesting, huh?
Did that also the Roman impose, like, Christmas holidays?
Absolutely, yes. The Romans imposed the holidays the way that they worked, and the reason one of the reasons they got rid of all the Bible holidays is they were, number one, Jewish. And they wanted to get rid of anything that was Jewish. In their minds, they were Jewish. You read the Bible, you know they're not. But in their minds, they were Jewish because the Jewish people were the only ones on earth that did them. Right? So let's get rid of all that. All right. But then you had the emperor, Constantine. He was one of them, but only one of them. Their idea was, look, we have all these people that are Christians now. They believe in Jesus, but they don't know. They don't know what the Bible is. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take the holidays that we already have, that we already know, and we're going to insert God and Jesus into them. Okay? So we're going to Christianize all of our holidays by changing the names of them and maybe taking some Bible verses and throwing them in there. Okay? So that's how you have Christmas and Easter.
Wasn't that also to help pagan?
And it was to make it easier.
Yeah.
Because, the easier you can make it, then the better it is, right? Maybe there's the problem. Which that just hands right off to today. The easier you can make it, the better it is. Which is why there's a gazillion churches that they can meet and worship and have a message and everything in 50 minutes. good to go. Okay, yup, you got to be done. You're done. You know, trap door opens up, pastor falls down, and everybody goes to eat lunch.
Because there's 4 more.
So I get, you know, I'm not suggesting make things difficult just to make them difficult, but, you know, there's a balance. I mean, in the Bible, it was Jesus. He was like, look, guys, this ain't easy. Okay? He said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That doesn't mean that the walk that you're going to have to walk is easy. Okay? It means that what I'm going to lay on you is going to be something that you're made for. Right? My yoke is easy, and my teachings will make your life more meaningful, not easier. If you want easy, don't do this, right? So, anyway, that's so now back into this idea of Shabbat, and Shabbat being only for the Jews. Very interesting in Isaiah. If you've never read Isaiah, if you read Isaiah 56, I love this chapter of Isaiah. Okay, and we're going to jump into it in the middle of it rather than the beginning. And the beginning's as good as the middle, but this is it. It says, and the foreigners who join themselves to Adonai. What's a foreigner? What does that mean? Non-Israelite. What's a non-Israelite? A Gentile. So even in Isaiah's day, he notes there are foreigners, that's non-Israelites, who want to join themselves to Yehovah. He says, great, for them so that they can serve him and love the name of Adonai and to be his workers, all who keep Shabbat and do not profane it, and hold fast to my covenant. So in Isaiah's mind, if you're a foreigner coming in and you want to love God and you want to serve him, the very number one part of that to Isaiah is keep Shabbat. Okay? And then he says, I will bring them to my holy mountain. Who? These foreigners. Where's the holy mountain? What does that mean? Jerusalem. And make them joyful in my house of prayer. What is that? The temple. Now, this has ramifications for what we were looking at last week in Matthew. The reason why is in Jesus, in Yeshua's day, the Jewish leaders had made a wall or a curtain or a fence within the temple area where the foreigners were only allowed to go just right into the very outer section of it, and then they were blocked. They were not allowed to enter in where all of the elements were and where all the worship went on and all of that. When in Isaiah, God, he says, I'm going to make you joyful in my house of prayer, and you get to make burnt offerings and sacrifices. Where was that done? That was done in the temple. Okay? And they will be accepted on my altar. And here's the words that Yeshua quoted when he turned over all of the temple, the tables and everything. For my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations. So, I mean, just let that sink in a minute, that since the very beginning, even back in the days of Isaiah, Isaiah knew it. God was after the whole world. He wasn't just building one elect group of people that would be his to the exclusion of everybody else. Anybody could join them, right? And what did they need to do to join them? Well, hold to the covenant. So, here we learn Sabbath is for all who join themselves to Yehovah. But in Yeshua's day, Sabbath, a lot like it is to some of us today, had become a burden. Why was it a burden? Because the religious leaders added a whole lot of other rules. Why would they do that? Here's some of the rules. Look, let's read some of the rules, and then let's think about why. Some of the rules, okay? In your notes, they're on page 3. You should not look in a mirror on the Sabbath because you might be tempted to pluck out a gray hair, and that would be working. I'm going to just right now confess to all of you that I have plucked out a gray hair on Sabbath. I have done that. Okay, next, donkey could not be let out of the stable on the Sabbath, but the harness and saddle had to be placed on it the day before. An egg could not be boiled on the Sabbath, either by normal means or by putting it near a hot kettle or wrapping it in a hot cloth or placing it on the hot stand outside. Presumably, you were making the egg work. Okay? It was unlawful to move furniture on the Sabbath. There was an exception to this in that you were allowed to move a ladder on the Sabbath, but you could only move it 4 steps. 4 steps. You were allowed to eat radishes on the Sabbath. Hallelujah! Right? Everybody throw your hands up. Wow, I'm allowed to eat radishes. I love radishes, but not that much. But you were warned against dipping them into salt because you might leave them in the salt too long and pickle them, and this was considered to be Sabbath breaking. You can eat the radishes, but don't pickle them. All right? The Pharisees actually had discussions as to how long it took to pickle a radish. I guess.
Deliver a baby.
Yeah, you can deliver a baby on Sabbath because delivering a baby has to do with life, but believe it or not, it's not considered creating. We'll look at that in a minute. Okay? God created the baby, in other words. You didn't. Okay? And last, I love this one because it's connected, all right, to something you already know. It was all right if you spit on a rock on Shabbat, but you could not spit on the ground because that made mud, and mud was mortar, and that was work. Now, where have you ever heard about somebody spitting on the ground and making mud? In the Bible. Yeshua, when he put the mud on the guy's eyes, spit on the ground, made the mud, put it on the guy's eyes. And I have to wonder if the religious leaders, they're standing around and they're watching, and Yeshua was like, oh yeah? Yeah, watch this. Okay? So he uses rebellious is probably not the right. He breaks one of their rules that's not in the Bible and heals a man by breaking the rule. So he might be like going, guys, you might want to drop those added rules. Just saying. So that's the way the religious leaders turned Shabbat into a burden. Okay, now the question is why? Why would they do that? You have an answer?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have sort of an answer.
Here, let me give you the mic so our online audience, which is few tonight, can hear you. There you go.
I'm not sure that this is the answer, but do you think because when they went into exile for not keeping God's laws, that they didn't want to make any mistake anyway, so they came up with the crazy rules?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that is one element of it, maybe the biggest element of it, okay? They went into exile, they got back from exile, and they was like, all right, we're never going to have that happen to us again. So if you get anywhere remotely near breaking one of Torah's rules, we're going to build a wall or a fence around the rule so you don't even get even near breaking it. Okay? That's one of the reasons why you read Adonai. or Lord rather than Yehovah. You read Adonai or Lord or Hashem, that's another one, or G-D, which you read on one of the things that I quoted there. The reason you do that is rather than risk breaking the commandment of Yehovah's name and taking it in vain, it would be easier if we never pronounced it at all or wrote it at all. So we're going to do that. So now you'll never break that law. So in your English Bibles, you have Lord, which is based on the Jewish tradition of Adonai. Both of them are not what's written in the Hebrew. So now you know. Now, there is another reason for that. One of the other reasons that they did that, and the rabbis did that, was because they were threatened early on by the Romans not to use the name. So they started using Adonai, which means master, which means Lord. So if you want, you can switch it off, unless you have another comment. Switch it off and set it down there, and we'll move on out. Okay, I think, yep, you're right. Okay, now, Yeshua was the one who was quoted in Mark as saying, Shabbat was made for man and not man for Shabbat. So the Son of Man is Lord even of Shabbat. Unfortunately, people take those words as meaning Jesus did away with it. Like, what? That's not what that says. Okay. But those are the words that are used as an excuse, right? It's like, well, we really don't need to do that. Why? The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. All that means is you and I, man, okay, we have been given the responsibility of keeping it. That's what it means. It was made for you. You're the ones that get to keep it, okay? God's not going to make you do it. He hands it over to you so you can do it. Yeah, David. Want a mic? Go ahead. Take the mic because we can't hear you.
I'm not sure if you like it when I do this, when I have kind of like what I think
Well, I
is
don't
an
know.
epiphany.
Go ahead.
Well, it just occurred to me that keeping the Sabbath was the last tether men had to the garden.
Oh, that's really good.
This was the last.
Could you guys all hear that? Do you hear
foothold.
David? Okay, he said that Sabbath and keeping it is like the last tether that man had back to the garden. Because it was in the garden, right? I mean, it was before he even made the garden, there was Shabbat. Okay, so you know there was Shabbat in the garden, and now that's the last line we have back at it being like it was in the garden. And what was it like in the garden? God walked with man in the cool of the day. It was intimacy. Sabbath is a key to having intimacy with God.
And maybe that's one of the reasons it was so remarkably important. It wasn't just the fact of working or
Right,
doing something
that's right.
you weren't supposed to do. It was flushing it.
I think you're right.
It was
Yes.
kicking it aside and
Yep.
pushing it away, which meant that, no, we're leaving the garden and we're never going back.
Right, because we have a better way of doing it.
So I'm not
Yep.
sure how that.
Well, you know what? Thank God. Thanks be to Yehovah that many, many, many of us are finding it. We're finding it all over again. Where we didn't know, we're learning. And people are reading their Bibles and going, hey, wait a minute. What's up with this? And the normal answer that was given back in my day when I was a young man, the normal answer that was given was, shut up, you don't need to understand that. All right, just sit down and do your work. Right? I've heard people say things like that. Thank God I never really was in that sort of a religion or denomination. I was always allowed to ask questions and be a rebel. But anyway, yeah, I think you're right. Now, here's something else that is written in our reading, okay? Very interesting. There's almost no, exacting long list of commands about Shabbat in Torah. It's basically rest on that day. Don't let your servants, don't make them work. Let your animals rest. You rest. And oh, by the way, there's this verse 3 in Exodus 35. You are not to kindle a fire in any of your homes on Shabbat. Well, what if you live in Alaska and that's the way you heat your house? That's the first thing goes through my mind when I read some of these things. I read some of these things like about, here's what I want you to eat. And I think about, yeah, well, what about the native people that lived in Alaska and they didn't have lambs, did they? I don't know. But I know way up north they had whales. Well, whales are not on the list. But if they didn't eat the whales, what else are they going to eat? Polar bears? Muktuk. Have any of you guys ever had muktuk? Do any of you like muktuk? Man, I had it once. I tried it, and it was interesting.
I've had it once.
You had it once. How was it?
Not great. Not terrible.
Not great, but not terrible. Yeah, I would go for that. Kind of reminded me of eating piece of somebody's flip-flop. Something like that. With a little bit of butter on it. But that doesn't have anything to do with this. All right, so what is this about fire and what does it mean? Okay, this is what Prager writes about this, that the answer about why fire was not allowed must lie in the meaning of Shabbat, to affirm that God is the creator by not working or creating on the day God ceased working and creating. The kindling of a fire is the closest humans come to creating. At least in the ancient days, when this was given, that makes complete sense. In our day, maybe not as much. Maybe that doesn't make any sense, all right? But, and it does not mean to not have a fire. You can have a fire to warm your house, to cook your meal, okay? As long as you kindled it before Sabbath begins. You get it? If you want to... Kindle means start. Don't start a fire. That's what it means. Don't start one. Now, Abraham Heschel, the great Jewish rabbi of a generation ago, his idea about the meaning of it and the meaning of the fire on Shabbat is not to get angry. Kindling a fire. Don't think about or write about or read about or watch or even talk about things that are going to make you angry. Okay? So just so that you know, that's what Gail and I do on Shabbat is we work, that's not a good word, we try not to bring up anything that's going to make us go, okay? What do you mean?
Is the purpose of that is to keep it?
To keep it holy, yeah. And that means no news. So I don't go near the news on Shabbat because I don't read the news without getting angry somewhere about somebody, right? So that's work. So don't do that. Don't listen to things on the radio that are going to make me angry or whatever. And don't
don't have debates, her and I, about anything that might raise our level of emotion to where we get angry. So that's just the way we do it, because we like Heschel's idea about doing it like that. So it's very, very relaxed to do that. Kind of get to the end of Shabbat and you're like, why can't it always be like this? Oh, well, because we're married. The reality is, if you're married and you have pulse, you're going to have debates. That's life and relationship, right? Okay, let's move on. I have something else. Some of you may already know this, some of you may not, but we're going to review the 10 words, and then we're going to learn how to memorize them easily. Okay? All right, so here's the words. They're written right there. I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the abode of slavery. You are to have no other gods before me. You are not to use lightly the name of Adonai, your God. Remember the day, Shabbat, to set it apart for God. Do you guys have the right notes?
I don't have that.
Okay, you don't have that? Oh, I must have missed that. Here, try that one. Page 4. Okay. Honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land which Adonai your God is giving you. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false evidence against your neighbor, do not covet. Okay. See the little diagram down there? Okay, so there are 10 numbers down there and 10 pictures. So all you have to do is remember what the picture means. It's a lot easier than memorizing lists of words. Back when I was doing graduate school, this is the way we did exams. Me and my study mates, we did exams just like this. We would have to list like this whole long outline of this, that, and the other, and we'd come up with these pictures. I remember one. There was a dolphin, and the dolphin was going into the clown, and then things crazy like that. But you'd be amazed because you can memorize stuff like this. Okay, so number 1 is easy. There's only one God. You have only one God. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Okay? Number 2 looks like a what? It looks like a snake, which is like an idol that they made in Egypt. So you're not to have any other gods. No idols, right? No snake idols or anything like that. That's number 2. The number 3 is inverted, turned over to look like lips, out of which come your words. So you're not to take the name of the Lord your God in vain, using your words. Now, we know that that's like the lowest level of meaning of that commandment, right? Taking his name in by saying, what was it people used to say years ago? They'd just be like, oh, God, right? And everybody was like, you took the Lord's name in vain, which, in a way, they were right. Okay? If you didn't mean anything by it and you weren't praying, then yeah, you probably did. But there's a lot bigger meaning to that. The meaning is, don't act like you're a believer when you're really not. Or don't act like the rest of the world and say that you're a believer. Get it? Because the name is all about your character and who you are, and the way you take it in name and take Yehovah's name in vain is by not living for Yehovah, by not representing him well. That's taking his name in vain.
So is this, I've never actually heard this like this before. Is this like someone saying I'm a Christian sort of as a classification, like I'm not Muslim, I'm not...
Yeah, okay. She said, is this like using Christian as a classifier, like I'm not Muslim, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Buddhist, I'm Christian. That would be an element of it, yes. That would be one example of it, yes. But I think the biggest example of it is people that want everybody else around them to know that they're Christians, but they act like everybody else. They're not walking, they're not following Torah, they're not, I don't mean perfectly, I mean, they're just not. They're like not the real deal. How many of those are there? I don't know. Thousands are not the real deal. Those are the same ones, by the way, that I think Yeshua was speaking about when he said on that day, there will be many people who will say, well, didn't we prophesy in your name? By the way, in Yeshua's day, do you know what it meant to prophesy in Judaism? Teach. So to use the words, well, didn't we prophesy in your name, was like a rabbi going, well, didn't I teach in your name? All right, so that really is aimed kind of directly at the religious leaders. Didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we cast out demons in your name? The Pharisees did that. They were expert exorcists. We cast out demons in your name. Didn't we, what was the other one? He says, didn't we work miracles or something like that in your name? And he said, I'm going to say to him, I don't know you, so get away from me. Depart from me. Same principle, taking his name in vain. So the number 3 is inverted to remind you of that. So 1, there's only one. He's number 1. 2 is a snake, no idols. 3 is lips sideways, no taking the name in vain. 4 is a chair which you rest in. Shabbat. Okay. 5 is it doesn't work well unless you have 2 colors, but you can figure it out and make something. It's father and mother. It's 2 different lines that are meeting together. Top line of the number 5 and the bottom circle of the number 5 is father and mother. So honor your father and mother. Okay. Number 6, do not murder, is either cannon or a gun. Okay, do not murder. 7 is bed. Do not commit adultery. 8 is handcuffs. Do not steal, because you go to jail. 9 is what is 9 there? 9 is a bear, to remind you not to bear false witness. So all I have to do is put the little ears on the 9, and then you have bear. And number 10 is kind of at a slant, which also gives you the letters C-O, do not covet. So, ta-da, there you go. I did not make that up.
Is that the pictorial?
That's the pic. Is that what?
The pictorial language.
Oh, no. No, this is not the ancient pictorial language. This is somebody wanted to memorize something and figured out a nice, creative way to do it. And it really works. Okay, let's move on. We'll find some deeper things here, all right? Verse 30 of 35. Moses said to the people of Israel, see, Adonai has singled out Bezalel, that's the name, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. He has filled him with the Spirit of God, with wisdom, understanding, knowledge concerning every kind of artisanry. We read a verse last week that was a lot like that, that lets you know the argument that the Holy Spirit arrived at Pentecost is wrong. Okay? He was always there. He was there from Genesis 1, right? And here he fills a guy. It says very clear in Hebrew, he was filled with the Ruach. What did the Ruach give him that he would not have had without the Ruach Spirit in him? Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge concerning every kind of artisanry. He made him an artist. But he wasn't an average artist. Okay, he was an amazing artist. And their ability to craft what they did in the number of days that they did out of things like gold and wood and things like that, amazing, unheard of. Had to be a miracle, which it was. Okay. All right, now, you may remember when we looked at Genesis 1 that we built a little bit of, we looked at the words where we not only looked at the words, but we took the letters of the words and made words out of them. Fun, right? It's like a game. That's a very valid Jewish way of interpreting and adding layers of meaning to scriptures. Okay, so here's the example from Genesis 1:1. We read it earlier, right, before Ethan got here, so he didn't need to read it. He didn't have to read it. You should read it now. Dude, I'll give you, here it is in Hebrew. No, I'm kidding. Out loud. No. Okay. So here it is. So we'll read it together. Okay. And I even have the little transliterations there in the notes. So now you know how to say them. But remember, you're reading right to left, even in English. This is in the middle of 5 in your notes. Beresh eat. You see that in your notes? Bereshit, Bereshit, Bereshit. You look like you don't have them, Kat. 5. The middle of 5. It's okay. Sometimes I jump around. Is it not in there? Try this one. Is that one that you printed on your own?
Yeah, the ones you print on your own is a...
That's weird, because I hit print and I make those, and then I hit send and I email them. So I have no idea. That's bizarre. But anyway, here we go. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et haaretz. So now you know how to read that, okay? Now, the ancient Hebrew letters, as you know, were different. You brought those up a minute ago, okay? The word Bereshit is the first word in the Bible. And here's the letters and the meaning of the letters. So you have a Beit, a Resh, an Aleph, a Shin, a Yod, and a Tav. It means house, head, strong leader, consume, do, or covenant, all of those letters. Bottom line is, when you put those letters together in the pictographs and make a sentence out of them, you get something like, the house of the highest God will be consumed by his own hand on a cross. Genesis 1:1. What's more is Genesis 1:1, the Bereshit begins with the letter Beit. What does Beit mean? House. Okay? So you could look at that as God, in the very beginning, the number one thing that God wants you to know is he's building a house. Okay? What you're going to read and what this is all about is the building of a house. Okay, now if you remove the Beit and all you have left is Reshit, well, Reshit is a word, a Hebrew word. And what Reshit means is the first or choicest or first fruits. Okay, which, by the way, Paul writes about Yeshua is the first fruits, as we're also going to be first fruits. All right, but if Yeshua is, then that means God is preparing or building a house for his first fruits. Okay, take the next set of letters there. You have a Beit and a Resh and a Yod and a Tav, and you get Brit. Brit means covenant, or cutting. So the house that God is preparing is going to be built through a covenant. Within the letters of Bereshit, you have Aish. Okay, Aish means fire. That means that the covenant somehow is going to involve fire. All right? And within the letters of Bereshit, you have the Aleph Tav. which we already know is that marker of the Messiah, that I am the beginning and the end. Aleph, Tav, A, and Z. All right? You also, within the word bereshit, have the word she, which means a gift or present in Hebrew. Taken all together, you'd have something like this. God is building a house for his first fruits through a covenant of fire that is a gift from the beginning and the end. Whatever it is, it's amazing. Okay? Playing with letters like that. Is it all right to do that? Well, not if you're a theologian, perhaps, because you have your boxes. So that kind of gets us out of our boxes into knowing that what the scriptures communicate to us is a lot more than doctrine. Theology, doctrine. No, they give us these pictures of what God is like and what we're like and what his relationship with us is supposed to be and what ancient people, how they related to him and how everything in their life revolved around him. It's just amazing. Bless you. Okay. Moving on here, you have that Adonai has also given to him, that's Bezalel, Aholiab, the son of Ahishamach of the tribe of Dan, the ability to teach others. Okay? Robert Alter, in his version, says that he gave him not only the skill to execute these crafts, but also the capacity to instruct crews of ordinary craftsmen how to do what they needed to do. Okay, so it wasn't just a job of being able to be an artist. It was a job of how to be an artist and a leader, because he had a whole bunch of other people that were working for him and working under him. Okay, next in the reading, we read about Moses telling Israel that they're going to take up the collections of items that are needed to build the tabernacle. And do you remember what happened? What happened?
Got more than they needed.
They got more than they needed. What an offering. Right? Bring it. And then they're like, tell them stop. They got to stop. You're bringing too much. You know, wouldn't that be something to hear me or somebody on a Friday night go, no, stop, no more. You're bringing too much. Different circumstance, okay? All right, the rest of the things that are on here you can read in the notes, but I think there's the thing that I wanted to really bring out was the last quote or statement in your notes, page 8. 38:8. He made the basin of bronze with its base of bronze from the mirrors of the woman serving at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Did you ever notice that before? He made its base of bronze from the mirrors. Okay? And Robert Alter points out that mirrors in the ancient world were made of polished brass, not glass. And they were an Egyptian luxury item. So where did the women get the mirrors? From the Egyptians, okay? Several medieval commentators, medieval now, okay, note that the very objects used by the women for the purposes of vanity are here dedicated to sacred ends. This verse complements the emphasis on the prominent role of women in the donations that was brought forth in Exodus 35. So in Exodus 35, when they were bringing too much, it was the women who were bringing all of this. And now the women are giving over their mirrors. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine going for a month or years without having a mirror?
I think it's funny that they're given the Egyptian plunder.
And they're obviously given that in order that they can build all this. Right? Not for their own use, but you know when they left Egypt, they were like, whoa, is that what I look like? Oh my gosh, look at my hair. I got to get something. I don't know. But they handed them over. So they handed the mirrors over. And I thought that was interesting thinking about, oh my goodness, what would it be like to not look in a mirror for maybe all of your life? I don't know. What would that be like? Can you imagine not having a mirror? You'd have water. You could look at your reflection in water and go, what in the world is that? Right? But I mean, now you can just do it right here with your iPhone. It's kind of neat. Sometimes when I'm out to eat with my wife or whoever, hold on, I can look on my phone, turn on my camera, hit the little button that turns it around and looks at me, and I can hold it up like this and see what's going on behind me.
Oh, no.
Have you ever done that? No. Now you know. So if my wife is ever like, don't look now, but that person behind you, and I go just like that, and I'm like, I'm looking right at him. Okay, people online, they have questions and want to throw something at me. Was there a hand up there? Nope, just laughing. Thank you so much. All right, who's going to begin? Ray, go ahead. Your hand's up.
Well, I know Paul said later, the word was our mirror.
Sure,
I don't
that's
know
right.
if they said that in the Old Testament, but
No.
it was to focus on what God's character is our new mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. And it's used in Jacob as well, the book of Jacob, James. Now I get them mixed up in my mind. It was used there as well that the Torah is like a mirror.
Yeah.
Because it's like you read about what you're supposed to look like, and that's what you use. So that's good. But I used the other
And so
one.
our character means more than our hair.
Absolutely. Yes. Everybody knows that. Right? You better know that.
Doesn't, but that's good.
You need to know that. Okay, Matthew, is that your hand up?
Yep. Is there a book or something that you read that has those word dissections?
Those word dissections are from Mark Biltz. That's where I originally got them, and I believe he got them maybe from a guy named Seekins, Seeins, who has a book out about word pictures in the Hebrew language. So, good question. Anybody else? Questions or comments? Because we zipped right through it tonight, which means we'll be done a little early. But I'm here. That's it? But I'm pumped. You want to read more Hebrew?
Okay, so I have a question about that.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. You get the mic.
So I'll admit I don't study Hebrew when I'm not here, but I'm just curious, how long does it take to get proficient? Like, is this something compared to like learning Spanish or another language?
Do you
It's new
know
to
any
me.
other languages?
I know enough to ask for the check and where the bathroom is in a couple.
Okay. It's all up to you. You can get proficient in a language in 6 months. It just means you have to work a lot to do it. You have to spend hours, maybe a couple hours a day, something like that, working at it.
I feel like reading it from right to left is, well, it's like driving a stick shift in a, you know what I mean?
No. Because I drive a stick shift. What do you
No,
mean?
no, no. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. In other countries, when you're on the opposite side of the road, you're on the
Oh,
opposite
so you have
side
to
of the
use your
car,
other
so
arm.
You keep hitting the windshield wipers when you're trying to, that's how learning Hebrew feels to me.
Oh, well, it's only like that right at the beginning, okay? Once you get over that bump at the beginning, I think it makes it easier. To me, Hebrew is maybe the easiest language that I've ever learned, okay?
That's
I had to learn Greek, I had to learn German, I had to learn Spanish, English, obviously, and then Hebrew, 5 languages, all right? Hebrew was the easiest of them. And the reason is because it isn't like any of the other languages. Because on all the other languages, you get everything mixed in together and mixed up, and it just is like, and there's more words, there's more conjugations of verbs and all that. Hebrew's just boom. Okay, there are verbs, conjugated verbs, but there's only like 3 that matter rather than 6 or 9 like in all the other languages. So, if you dig in, you can do it. You'd be amazed. And the way I do it and the way I teach it is like a boy or a girl, a young boy or a girl learning English, learning to speak. Is how's the best way to learn how to read? Phonics. Okay? So you learn the sounds of the letters, and then you begin to put the letters together with these sounds, and then you begin to recognize those are words. And words that you've heard, like Genesis 1:1, right? Bereshit bara Elohim. Oh, I know that word. Okay, so if you can read it, oh, Elohim, sound it out, you start recognizing them and what they mean. And maybe you've listened to messages and sermons where you hear Yehovah, or you hear all sorts of Hebrew words, shalom. Okay, when you read that in Hebrew and you're reading along and you're sounding it out and you're reading words that you have no idea what they mean, that's all right. Okay, it gets your mind used to moving in that direction, and then you'll sound one out and it'll be like shalom. Oh, I know that word. And then you start to learn words, vocabulary, because now you can look at it in Hebrew and you can go shalom. That means make a flashcard. All the languages I ever learned, I learned using flashcards.
Does Vine and Branches have flashcards? I'll bet they do.
You can buy them or you can buy them online, but if you make them, you will learn it faster.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can use that. Yeah. Keyboard on your phone, you can get programs and apps. I have an app on there that's a Hebrew app.
That's what I've been using for all the languages.
To help you learn. Which one?
Duolingo. It's
Duolingo.
fully paid for it, but
Cool. Okay. There you go. Anybody else? Questions? Okay. Remember, next week we will meet, but the week after that we will not meet. There will be nothing going on here Wednesday night because it's Passover. Now, that's not the night that we have our big dinner. We have our big dinner as a memorial and a witness and a time for our community to all get together on a day when, we don't have to worry about school and all that. But the literal day that's given in the Bible is Wednesday night. So on that Wednesday night, if anybody wants, I will have some things that you can take home with you. I hope I'll have them done by Friday night. You can take them home, and there's one that Gail and I did online that's 40 minutes, a 40-minute Seder that we did the year that we didn't have Passover because of other things that happened. 2020 was that year. So we watched a little of it today online. We watched, Gail and I were looking at it, and of course I said to my wife, Gail, who's that young guy with you there? Because that was like 4 years ago. I was like, well, who is that young guy? Anyway. All right. Yes. Whoop. There's one. Kathy has her hand up. Let me unmute you. Kathy, ask to unmute. You'll have to unmute you. Do you know how to? In His Own Words. Yeah, that's a great book. In His Own Words. That's a great Hebrew book. You can order that one if you want. There you are. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what is that one about?
Well, when I think Matthew asked where you got your information from, there's so much in here. It's a lot of trivia, but Patty used this to teach, and it was so good because it's a lot of fun little things to learn.
Yeah, in His own words. Good. We used to have that in our book collection up there, but I think we don't have any more of those left. But like everything else, you can get it on Amazon. In His Own Words, who's the author of that?
It's Luton, L-U-T-O-N.
L-U-T-O-N. Luton. Grant Luton.
Luton.
In His Own Words. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I will say good night. Good night to you all. Shalom. And oh, by the way, I'll let you know, Friday night, Art is going to be giving the rundown of Arabia and going to Mount Sinai and what that was like. And we're going to have pictures, and he's going to have stories and testimonies of some amazing things that God did while he was there. So,
Cool.
okay.
That's going to be fun.